All right, so today we're going to dive into a pretty big one. Should we have children? Like, that's one of those life choices that I think a lot of people really kind of wrestle with. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we are going to unpack an article called Having a Child, Joy or Pain? A critical analysis from psychological and spiritual perspectives
Okay.
from a website called The Spiritual Seek. And this article really goes there.
It does. It definitely pushes you to examine your assumptions about the whole thing.
It does. So first off, it lays out all these reasons, that people give for wanting to have children. And we've all heard them, right?
Right.
Like love ambition, wanting a role in life. A lot of people talk about, hoping for future support. Some people even talk about trying to fix a relationship by having a child.
Right.
And then you have the kind of the lineage, continuing the family line, all that. And then, of course, you have the whole fear factor.
Right.
Fear of regret, fear of what other people are going to think. Oh, when you're going to have kids, your biological clock is ticking,
Oh, yeah. All those things.
All that. And then it's interesting, how these reasons often overlap, right?
They do.
Like someone might say, oh, I want to have kids because of love, but is it really in love with the idea of a child?
That's a good question to ask yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Are you actually in love with the idea of a child, or are you trying to fill some sort of void in your own life that maybe shouldn't be filled by a child?
Right. And it's easy to romanticize, I think, parenthood.
Sure.
The article really challenges us to look deeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they bring up this concept. It's called Wendy's syndrome. Have you ever heard of that?
I have heard of Wendy's syndrome.
Yeah. So this is basically where someone, often it's a woman, might over-sacrifice in the caregiving role because they sort of need to be needed.
Mm.
And it can actually be tied back to low self-esteem.
Mm.
And I can see how that could backfire in a parenting.
Definitely.
Right. So the question is, are you really ready to nurture another human being, or are you hoping that this child will somehow complete you?
Exactly.
Which is, that's a lot to ask.
It is.
Yeah.
And what about the ambition? I mean, the desire to kind of create this perfect family. The article argues that focusing on this external picture can really distract you from your own personal growth, which then begs the question, can you really be a good parent if you haven't really figured yourself out yet?
Right. I mean, that's a pretty big responsibility, bringing another human being into the world.
Right.
And now here's where the article takes a turn that you might not be expecting. They claim that having children is mostly driven by instinct,
Okay.
not choice.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's a bold statement. But when you think about it, I mean, isn't there some sort of primal urge in us to kind of create, to connect, to continue life?
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost a force of nature, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. So are we basically saying then that we're all just puppets to our biology?
Not necessarily, but I think being aware of those, kind of deep-seated instincts can help us make more conscious choices, which is what this article's all about, really.
Right.
Taking a step back, examining and questioning those kind of knee-jerk justifications for having kids.
Okay. So let's play devil's advocate here for a second. People say, oh, children are made out of love. But is it really love for a child that doesn't even exist yet? Or is it, like the article suggests, something else kind of disguised as love?
Right. That's something to think about. Is it really pure love? Or is it about, fulfilling your own needs or your own expectations or even societal pressure?
Right. And then there's that whole idea of having kids for support in your old age. Is that fair? I mean, is it even guaranteed?
Right. I mean, are you really viewing that child as an individual with their own path? Or are you viewing them as someone who is obligated to take care of you later?
Right.
Which is...
And what about the idea that a child can save a struggling relationship?
Oh, yeah.
That seems like a lot of pressure on a little human.
It's like a Band-Aid.
Right.
A child might bring temporary joy, but if the, underlying issues aren't addressed, they're just going to resurface eventually.
Yeah. And then we have the lineage, the family name, carrying it on.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just ego talking?
Yeah. It's worth exploring that. What's driving that? Is it, a genuine sense of connection to your family history? Or is it maybe a fear of your own mortality?
Yeah. Okay. This next one is a big one. Fear of regret or judgment.
Oh, yeah.
Are those really your reasons? Or are you letting societal expectations kind of dictate your choices?
I mean, self-awareness is key here, right? Are you making this decision based on what you truly want or what you think you should want?
Okay. So we've covered a lot of the psychological ground here, but this article also dives into the spiritual side of things,
Okay.
particularly the concept of reincarnation, that our souls might have lived many lives before this one, and those experiences might be influencing our choices today. It's almost like we're carrying around invisible baggage, and you don't even know about it.
Yeah.
To kind of illustrate this, they bring up this thing called the myth of from Plato. Are you familiar with that?
I am. Yeah, it's a classic story about a soldier who gets a glimpse of the afterlife. And what's so fascinating about it is that the souls actually get to choose their next lives.
Really?
Yeah, it's almost like picking a character in a video game.
Mm-hmm.
But those choices are shaped by, their past experiences and desires.
Yeah.
Even if they can't remember them.
Huh.
Yeah.
So it's like we're unconsciously drawn to certain paths.
Right.
Based on what our soul has already learned or experienced or whatever. But
Yeah.
if we're forgetting those past lives, what's the point of coming back over and over again?
Right. That's a question philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries. What is the purpose of this whole cycle of reincarnation if we're just constantly hitting the reset button, so to speak, on our memories?
Right.
Maybe it's something beyond individual memory. Perhaps some deeper kind of soul evolution is unfolding.
Okay, deep divers, hold on tight, because we're going to go even deeper down this rabbit hole. We're going to talk about near-death experiences, or NDEs. Those stories that people tell about having those profound out-of-body experiences while they're clinically dead.
They're really intriguing, aren't they? And while there are, attempts to explain them through science, certain aspects of NDEs do remain unexplained.
Like how someone can accurately describe what was happening in the room while they were supposedly unconscious.
Exactly.
It really makes you wonder if consciousness can exist separately from the body.
Yeah, it really challenges our understanding of what happens after death.
It does. And here's where the article gets really interesting. They ask if soul energy is constant but the population is booming, does that mean there's less soul to go around?
Whoa.
What do you think about that?
That's a fascinating question. If you kind of think of soul energy as a finite resource, are we spreading it thinner and thinner with each new generation?
Okay, now I'm getting goosebumps. What if you end up with a body without enough soul?
Right. Maybe it's not about the quantity of soul energy, but more about its expression. Perhaps some souls are just more dormant and some are more awakened, regardless of when they were born.
That's a fascinating thought.
Yeah.
So we've covered instinct, psychology, reincarnation, even touched on the mystery of the soul.
We've been busy.
We have.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears a little bit and explore the societal implications of all of this.
Okay.
Ready to tackle that?
Let's do it. And let me warn you, the article does not hold back. It even brings up the movie Idiocracy.
Oh, I love that movie. It's hilarious,
Yeah.
but also kind of terrifying. We'll get into all of that right after, well, we're not going to take a break. Actually, we're just going to keep going.
Okay.
So we were talking about Idiocracy, that satirical movie where society just basically dumbs itself down over generations.
Right.
I mean, hilarious, but also kind of terrifying.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Like it makes you wonder, what are the larger consequences of unchecked population growth, especially if, as this article suggests, we're not always making conscious choices about having kids.
Right. The movie exaggerates things
Right.
for comedic effect, of course.
Yeah.
But it does raise some important questions.
Like what?
Well, like what happens when individual choices driven by instinct or, societal pressure clash with what might be best for society as a whole?
And the article points out this really interesting paradox. Like, on the one hand, we're encouraged to have kids. But on the other hand, questioning that reproductive instinct is practically taboo.
Yeah, it's a sensitive topic for sure. I mean, there's this deep-rooted reverence for parenthood that makes it really difficult to have an honest conversation about the potential downsides.
So let's turn this around for a second. Let's say you're someone who's really passionate about, making the world a better place.
Okay.
Does having a child actually contribute to that goal, or could it potentially add to the challenges that we're already facing?
It's a question worth pondering. If you're concerned about overpopulation, resource depletion, climate change, does bringing another human into the mix really help or hurt the situation?
And the article's stance is pretty clear. Like, we need to move beyond that blind instinct and start making more conscious choices about parenthood.
It's not just about what we want as individuals.
Right.
It's about considering the bigger picture. What kind of future are we creating for these kids? And are we prepared to really equip them to navigate the challenges of that future.
Now, get ready for this. The article throws in this really thought-provoking quote from the Stoics that birth might actually be a form of imprisonment for the soul,
Yeah.
and death a potential liberation.
It really challenges our usual way of thinking about life and death, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, what if our souls are actually here to learn and evolve, and this physical body is just a temporary vessel for that journey?
So maybe death isn't something to fear, but rather a transition to a different state of being.
Possibly.
It's like graduating from one level of existence to the next. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's a perspective that's been around for centuries, this idea that death might be a form of liberation for the soul.
I mean, it definitely makes you think differently about the whole cycle of life and death. The article even quotes Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher. He said, "It takes the whole of love to learn how to live, and what will perhaps make you wonder more, it takes the whole of life to learn how to die."
It's a powerful reminder that life is this continuous journey of learning and growth,
Yeah.
and that death is an integral part of that journey.
Wow, we covered some serious ground in this depth dive.
We did.
We explored the psychology of wanting children. We delved into spiritual concepts like reincarnation, near-death experiences, and even touched on some pretty profound philosophical ideas about life and death.
We certainly did. And through it all, we kept circling back to this core question. Is having a child an instinctual drive, a societal expectation, or a conscious choice?
Right. And I think what I'm taking away from all of this is that it's probably a mix of all three. But the most important thing is to become aware of those influences and make a decision that feels aligned with your values and your vision for your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tune out the noise, whether it's coming from your biology or from societal pressures or even from well-meaning family and friends.
So if you're wrestling with this decision, here's what I would ask yourself. What are your reasons for wanting to have a child? And are those reasons truly yours, or are they echoes of something else?
And how does this decision really fit into the bigger picture of your life, your relationships, and the kind of world you want to create or contribute to?
It's a big decision, no doubt, but hopefully this deep dive has given you some new perspectives and some food for thought as you navigate this very personal journey.
Remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. What matters is that you make a choice that feels authentic to you. A choice that you can fully stand behind, knowing that you've considered all the angles.
Beautifully said. So as we wrap up this episode, we want to leave you with this thought. Parenthood can be an incredibly rewarding experience, but it's also a profound responsibility.
It's a choice that deserves careful consideration, honest introspection, and perhaps even a little soul-searching.
Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to have a child is yours and yours alone. But we hope this deep dive has empowered you to make that decision with a greater sense of awareness, intentionality, and peace.
And until next time, deep divers, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries of life.
Yeah, it's a perspective that's been around for centuries. This idea that death might be a form of liberation for the soul.
It really makes you think differently about the whole cycle of life and death. The article even quotes Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher.
Oh, yeah.
He said, "It takes the whole of life to learn how to live, and what will perhaps make you wonder more, it takes the whole of life to learn how to die."
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that life is this continuous journey of learning and growth, and death is an integral part of that journey. Wow, we covered some serious ground in this deep dive.
We did.
We explored the psychology of wanting children, delved into spiritual concepts like reincarnation, near-death experiences. We even touched on some pretty profound philosophical ideas about life and death.
Yeah, we did. And through it all, I think we kept coming back to this core question: is having a child an instinctual drive, a societal expectation, or a conscious choice?
Right. And I think what I'm taking away from this is that it's probably a mix of all three.
Probably.
But the most important thing is to become aware of those influences.
Absolutely.
And make a decision that feels aligned with your values and your vision for your life.
Exactly. Tune out the noise, whether it's coming from your biology or from societal pressures or even from well-meaning family and friends, and really listen to that inner voice.
So if you're wrestling with this decision, here's what I would ask yourself. What are your reasons for wanting to have a child? And are those reasons truly yours, or are they echoes of something else, something outside of yourself?
And how does this decision fit into the bigger picture of your life? Your relationships and the kind of world you want to create or contribute to.
It's a big decision, no doubt, but hopefully this deep dive has given you some new perspectives and some food for thought as you navigate this very personal journey.
Remember, there's no right or wrong answer here.
Right.
What matters is that you make a choice that feels authentic to you. a
Yeah.
choice that you can fully stand behind, knowing that you've considered all the angles.
Beautifully said. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this thought. Parenthood can be an incredibly rewarding experience,
Absolutely.
but it's also a profound responsibility.
It's a choice that deserves careful consideration, honest introspection, and perhaps even a little soul searching.
Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to have a child is yours and yours alone, but we hope this deep dive has empowered you to make that decision with a greater sense of awareness, intentionality, and peace.
And until next time, deep divers keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries of life.